Next week, President Obama welcomes 50 African leaders to Washington for the first ever U.S.-African Leaders Summit. Now, the summit is designed to advance America's focus on trade and investment in Africa and highlight the administration's commitment to Africa's security and democratic development. But some also see this as a rare opportunity for leaders to address the goal of ending hunger by 2030. For more insights, I am joined by Faustine Wabwire, Senior Foreign Assistance Policy Analyst at Bread for the World. So, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you.
First, I know you just came straight from meeting the First Lady of the United States.
Absolutely. That was wonderful.
Yeah, what was that meeting about?
So, Mrs. Obama was meeting the young African leaders who are here as part of the ongoing Leaders Summit. Yeah. 500 of these young leaders have been invited by the President as a way of U.S. commitment to foster leadership, investing in the next generation of African leaders. The First Lady actually really underscored the need to invest in women and girls, and she challenged the young leaders to kind of be the change agents to make this really happen.
Great, that would be good. And, you know, for the future of the African continent, one of the most critical things is how to feed that continent and end hunger by 2030. African leaders are coming here next week. What really do you think they can do in advancing that agenda?
First of all, it's very exciting for Africa right now. We've seen quite impressive economic growth on the continent. I think that in itself presents an opportunity for us to really take these commitments to the next level, make them actionable, invest in agricultural infrastructure, provide opportunities for small businesses and small farmers to thrive, to feed the future of Africa, because that's really where this needs to go.
Now, this conversation is not new. From your assessment from the Bread for the World and what you understand on the ground, what is the level of commitment of African leaders, of the kind of goals they have made before, the commitments they've made? What is the level of commitment in terms of implementation at this point?
You may remember the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. This was one of the frameworks the African leaders themselves put together in 2003, at which point they committed themselves to invest 10% of their national budgets in agriculture. To date, about 20, just slightly over 20 countries in the continent have achieved that goal. That's where we are falling short. That's really why hunger is persistent on the continent in spite of the impressive economic growth that's being registered there. So I think that while economic growth is great, we need to really fulfill these commitments, address the agricultural challenges that small farmers face to be able to feed themselves and really nourish.
Yeah, because indeed, talking about agriculture in Africa, you're talking about small farmers. But what is it that the United States needs to do more to help these African nations achieve that objective and feed their people at least by 2030?
At Bread for the World, we're actually hopeful at this time. It's not an easy task. We are looking at 3 different pieces of legislation that will be coming to Congress next year. The U.S. government has, for a long time, provided relief assistance in the form of food aid whenever there are emergencies or shortages of food. At Bread for the World, we are happy that the President proposed some very important reforms to U.S. food aid so that it's purchased, for example, from areas where it's needed, so that it reaches a lot more people and at a much lower cost. Yeah. You may be surprised to hear that about half of the money that goes into the food aid program is actually spent on transportation and management. That's just a very inefficient way of delivering any kind of assistance. With the food aid reform that the President has proposed and Bread for the World is pushing for, this would make that program a lot more efficient. The other piece that we are delighted about is Feed the Future, which is President Obama's signature food security program that he launched in 2009. Now, this is trying to shift from the emergency response primarily towards developing agriculture systems so that it's more long-term and that countries themselves can be reliant and feed themselves. We hope that the legislation that the President might announce at the Leaders Summit would come into effect to make these investments through Feed the Future permanent beyond President Obama's administration.
Right. And we'll be listening very keenly to hear if it does make these pronouncements. Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
Faustine, for joining us today.
Thank you.
While Faustine Wabwire is a senior foreign assistant policy analyst at Bread for the World. We want to know now what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com.